Okay, welcome back. Here in this video, we're going to be jamming out our bass line. I've decided, based on our inspiration tracks, to go ahead with a very simple offbeat bass line. Nothing complicated, but if done right, you can really get the dance floor moving. I'll be using Sonic Academy's Anna to dial in my sound, and since I've used Anna before, I have just the preset in mind I'd like to start with. So let's go ahead and come over here and open up Anna. And the preset I'm looking for is in the Volume 3 bank. And it pretty much loads up right away, and it's this bass pluck here. Great. Okay, so before I get into it, let's go ahead and close that real quick. We left the filter kick on, and by we I mean me. It wasn't your fault. Left this filter kick channel on. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mute that and move this clip over for now because we don't need it. And then let's go ahead and create our MIDI clip and start putting some notes in and getting our offbeat bass line going. Okay, let's see here. So that's a little too high. Let's get a lower note. And I'm looking for D, because our track is in D. So right there, it's going to be D1. Okay, perfect. And then I've put our grid to a 16th note grid, as you can see down here in the bottom right corner. Just makes it easy to write this style of bass line. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting some notes in here. All right, and those are a little too short, so let's go ahead and lengthen those. All right, that should work. Okay, cool. Let's just go ahead and turn the velocity up on all these two, just like we did with the kick. Okay, cool. Sounds good, but of course we can make it sound a bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is just kind of have a play around with the note placements and some of the note duration. Probably do some pitch bends to get something a little bit more evolved. So let's get started. Let's try moving some of these notes up a bit. Maybe this one. Okay, cool. I like that. Let's hop on over here to the envelope window in Ableton and look at our pitch bend area. Okay, let's see. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to bend these notes that I've given some extra duration to. I'm going to bend those a bit. I get asked a lot how I make that curve happen. A lot of people don't know how to do that. On a Mac, it's Alt. So if you hold Alt and go up to the line, it gives you that little curve symbol, and then you can kind of like bend it a little bit. Okay, let's do the same here. That works. So I'm just going to duplicate that. Okay, cool. That's sounding really good. But I can make it sound better, and I know it. So let's do it. First thing we're going to want to do is start sculpting this bass and EQing it, making sure that we've eliminated our lower frequencies so they're not interfering with the kick, and basically making it really work nice and tight with the kick. So let's go ahead and load up. You know what? We're going to load Neutron. While we're here, let's go ahead and load up a copy of Neutron like we did with the kick. And we'll save that for a little bit later. And then the other thing I want to do is get an Ableton EQ going on in here. Okay, let's start with the EQ. Okay, I think right around there sounds pretty good. And then let's go ahead and cut the top off, so to speak. So I'm going to basically use the EQ to filter out some of the higher frequencies. And basically what I want is that kind of like womp sound. It's like it's got that like that punchy mid, but I don't want to cut too much of the highs off. But I also don't want that choppy, clicky bit at the top either. And then I'm just gonna dip this down here a little bit and get rid of some of that. Let's see how it's sounding with the kick right now. Let's turn that up a bit. Okay, I think that's sounding pretty good. But doing the EQing here has left the mid-range a bit dull, in my opinion. One of my favorite plugins to use on my bass lines is Ableton Saturator. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop a copy of Saturator right before the EQ here. And like I said before, I'm a total preset junkie, but I make them work for me. I'm going to grab this preset here a bit warmer. I really love this this setting here. It just really does wonders on the mid-range and on basses. It just brings it right out. The drive is definitely probably giving us a little bit too much distortion in that area in the mid-range here. So what I'm going to do is just turn this down a bit. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and run this through Neutron and see what kind of readout it's going to get us. So again, I'm going to turn on Track Assistant. All right, let's see what it's done. First thing I'm going to do is just turn off the exciter and the compressors. I just want to focus on the EQ that's given us here. I like that. See, now here's an instance where I've hit this Track Assistant and it's given me yeah, exactly what I'm hearing in my head. It's dipped this little point here, which is around 288 hertz, which I find that around 290 hertz is always problem frequencies. So it's given us a little dip there, which makes sense. It's brought the sub down, this sub area. And what I want to do is I'm going to hit this masking button. And let's go back to the kick here. And this is the really cool this is one of the really cool features here in Neutron. So I can basically title that kick, and I'll come over here and title this bass. And what I can do now is these plugins will literally talk to each other. I can pull this menu down, choose kick, and then I've got my kick down here in the bottom window with my bass up here. And what it allows me to do is see the problem areas between these two sounds and compensate for that. So let's have a listen and see what it's going to do. And then right here you've got a Sensity fader, I guess, so to speak. You've got a and you can basically adjust for high and low, and it'll give you an intensity value here, and which you'll see here in a second. So basically it's showing a problem like right here around, what was that, it's like 60 hertz or so. But see, it's dipped, it's already dipped some of the sub out, and we've got this boosted here. So I'm gonna leave that alone and call it a day. And give this just maybe a little bit more volume. Okay, cool. Next thing I'm gonna do is load up basically another EQ or filter. I'm going to load up the auto filter. And again, you'll hear me say this a lot. These are kind of like when I use EQ or filters, I use them for my insurance policy. It's just basically to make sure that I've really adjusted for frequencies that I don't want in my mix. So I'm going to flip this around to a high pass because we're letting the highs pass through. So we're going to do a low cut. And basically, I'm going to put this around 60 hertz. Just going to dial that in. There. Wait, that is not my kick. I mean my bass. Let's go back to the bass here. I meant to put that on my bass line. Okay, there we go. And basically how I'm coming up with that number is right here on my first EQ. I've got, let's go ahead and just put that at 60 as well. So I'm basically cutting my lows at 60 hertz here. And then I've added, you know, some additional sound design. And I want to basically cut again to make sure that I'm really still scooping off anything below 60 hertz. Okay, cool. Now the next thing I want to do to this sound is I have a plugin I like to use, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but it really is one of my like little secret weapon plugins, and it's Native Instruments Vericomp. And I have a setting in here called, well, it's not my setting, but Synth Enhancer. And this really, really brings sounds to the front of the mix. And since this bass line is kind of the driving force of the track that we're going to be writing out here, I want this bass line, what sound I have sculpt, I want that sound to come right to the front. So I'm just going to A/B that for you. And so this is the very, you know, it's a compressor, and so basically it's just giving us a really nice color. I think it really like warms sounds up and gives it some nice characteristics. So let's see how that sounds now. Cool, that's coming together really nicely. So the only thing that I can hear now is the tail on the bass line that we've done here is kind of extending over into the kick a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is drop LFO tool here. Let's see, audio tools, LFO tool. Oh, here we go. And I'm basically just going to apply some sidechain to the sound and kind of get rid of that tail at the end there. And that cleans it up really nice. Now let's listen. Okay, great. I'm really loving the way this is sounding. And now that we've got this bass line, let's really go ahead and sculpt this thing. And what I like to do in my tracks is, if I'm going to write a bass line, I like to try to have 2 or 3 components that make up that bass line. It really gives us something that can be a little bit more complex and rhythmic, really make the listener go, like, wow, how'd they do that? What I like to do, instead of just writing another bass line, and this is where, using loops can come into play, is I'll just go and start cycling through some loop presets and see if I can't find something that kind of plays along nicely with something that I've already written here. And what I found is that when you, kind of basically smash 2 sounds together, or smash 2 loops together, you can actually create something new and unique just from doing that. I like to think of it as collaging. Like if you've seen people do like a collage art, they'll take 3 or 4 different pieces of art, put them together, and then that creates a new piece. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. So with that in mind, I'm going to create a new audio channel, and I'm going to solo our bass line and basically hit play and start cycling through some other bass lines and see if I can't find 2 to play nice together. So we're going to go over here to our Sonic Academy folder that we created earlier, and here are some of the sample packs that I've downloaded from the Sonic Academy site. And let's start with this dark techno here. So right here, bass loop 123. So we're in D, so what we want to do is, right now I can tell that something like that, it's very simple, it's not very rhythmic, and it's very similar to what we've already written, so that's probably not going to work. Here's a D sharp, which we could bring in and transpose down a point, and so let's see how that sounds. Okay, that's not bad. Let's bring that in. We might play with that one. Oh, wrong channel. Hello. Okay, there we go. Cool. Let's have a look in another folder here. We'll try this dark tech house. Okay, and again, we're in D. Sure, let's try that. Let's go out here. We're going to change our playback here to half a bar. It's a little too much. Let's try this one. Too much. That's cool. That could work. Let's try this one. Cool. I really like that one. Let's try that. Let's bring that in here. All right. So I'm just going to solo the 2 of those together. Cool. Let's go with that one. That one sounds good. So again, we're going to have to start sculpting this so that it works with the bass line. And the thing I like about this is it's got the atmosphere. You can hear an atmosphere really moving through here. Right there. I like that. I think that'll really enhance the sound to the bass here. So it gives it something a little bit more complex going on. So let's grab an EQ. And And of course, we're going to scoop out the very low lows. You can hear a lot of those resonant frequencies happening there. We have to be really careful of that. If too many of these get through and into the mix, we're going to have a problem. So this is going to be a little bit of a tricky sound to use, but we're going to make it work. I think what I'll do is I'm going to boost this right here. I'm going to boost this sound. Let's try that. All right, and I think what I'll do is I'll bring Neutron again in here and see what Neutron has to say. I think I'm going to cut that. Okay, I think that'll work. Let's try doing this. So in the beginning of the loop here, it's got this really kind of like basically these resonant frequencies that are coming through. So I want to cut those out. So I'm going to put some fades on those sounds because really all I'm interested in is this middle piece here. So I'm going to cut here and I'm going to fade out on the front and back of that phrase right there. That whoop whoop. We don't want that. Okay. All right, let's try that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now, last thing I'm going to do here is grab LFO tool again. And I think what I'll do is cycle through some of these sidechain presets. That sounds awesome. Okay, done. This is sounding really great. I'm happy with these these elements sitting together in the mix currently. And the way to think of it too is, if you're going to have anything in your track, the way that I always like to think of it is, if just this element or just these three parts were playing on the dance floor right now, would you have something that people would be, grooving to? And right now, people would definitely be grooving to this. So we've got something really good. We can build on it from here. Join us in the next tutorial where we will be going over our snares and hi-hats. All right, see you then.